Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I am Patty Bourne. I'm here with Tiffany Castagno. How
Good
are you?
morning. Good morning. I'm doing well, Penny. How are you?
Doing great. I just wanted to go ahead and just say thank you, of course, for coming together with me this morning to have a little chat. Just nothing formal, just really having a conversation. But I think it's important for maybe everyone to know how it is exactly that we connected, which I think is a pretty interesting story. Did you want to tell part of that or?
Sure. So, Patty and I actually met on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great platform where you get to connect with people all over the world. I am so blessed to have met you through there. We actually met through, this is the beauty of being able to comment on things and extend your reach. So, Patty and I actually were on the same person's post who we liked, and we were both commenting, and I said, I have to meet this woman. She has a powerful story, I can tell, and I love her energy. I just love people with this positivity. And so I sent her a request to connect, and then I said, hey, love your energy, let's connect. I really love the story, and thank you for being so vulnerable, and I saw you as an advocate and a champion. So I'm super blessed that I did connect with you that day.
Yeah, that was really fantastic the way that that happened. And, I just kind of challenged myself to get out there and really comment on things and really just to kind of be transparent about a lot of things, really pushing myself out of my comfort zone, honestly. And you were just like, hey, I like what you said. And I think I may have said something like, well, what did I comment on? Because I've been commenting on everything. And you kind of refreshed my memory, and then it was like, oh, okay, great. And then the rest is kind of history, and your personality just really was apparent even in the message that you sent. I was like, wow, she's like larger than life, she's fantastic. Like, I'm so happy that she reached out. So I think once we kind of got all the formalities out of the way, it was like, hey, we should do something together. And then
Yeah.
the rest is history, is right?
It is. It is. We formed a quick bond and friendship, and you've helped me out through some difficult times. A lot of people know that my mom had COVID and was in the hospital, and it was super tough. And you've been just a great friend and resource for me, and I really appreciate you.
Oh, no problem. Like, that's just what I do. That's, that goes without even thinking. But yeah, amazing how things happen that way, right?
Yeah.
I had no idea about mom or anything like that, and it was just kind of perfect timing. So, and I don't believe in coincidences, so I kind of feel that that was supposed to happen that way. But yeah, you're very welcome, of course. And that's what happens. Sometimes you're just in the right place at the right time, and you're able to help somebody, and that's truly tremendous. But why don't you go ahead and tell people that you're awesome at other stuff too, and what it is what it
See,
is
this
that
is
you
why.
do. Like, the awesomeness doesn't stop there. There's more. Like the sham wow guy. There's more.
So wait.
She's yeah, so she's got, a whole laundry list of things that she's amazing at. And why don't you go ahead and just share that with everybody that doesn't know you yet?
You're so kind, Betty. I too believe in, I don't really believe in coincidences, and I believe that there's a reason that you came into my life at that time, that place, that space. I'm very much so a believer in that, and so I know that you were brought to me, and I'm so grateful for that. Um, just a little about my background. I am currently the CEO of Zephyr, and we are an organization, an HR consulting firm. So I help clients, small business, nonprofits build their infrastructures, policies, systems, programs, processes, and really just believe in empathy and active listening and helping people solve problems that they may not see coming around the corner. I have a true passion for HR, and it is what I love. I believe that I was also called to do that. I also volunteer for an organization, a nonprofit called Girls Plus Data, and we help young women step into their confidence and understand what it's like to be in data and tech And so that's very, very rewarding as well. Our team is all volunteers. And so everyone does that outside of their traditional day job, which is amazing. Super engaged team, and very proud to be their head
Yes.
of people programs. Um, Also working on some co-authoring things with a book, a children's book, and so that's really fun. Outside of that, just meeting great people like you, and have been in HR for about 12 years in various industries, small business, nonprofit, for-profit, and large corporations. So enough about me. I feel like your story is so much
No,
more exciting.
a whole discussion just about everything that you mentioned. Like, oh my gosh. But that's great. And when I heard all the great things that you're involved in, I was just like, oh, she's just such an awesome human being. Like, to be in her space is going to be truly awesome. So that's definitely been the case. But you are passionate about helping people, as am I, and finding solutions, which is also kind of my unofficial job is playing detective every once in a while. So just a little bit of background to me. I wear many hats. I'm a Jane of all trades, as they say. And I am a registered nurse. I am a massage therapist. I also first aid and CPR instructor. Just recently became an executive life coach. And I'm a mom of four. And that in and of itself is a lot. But I also am going back to school, actually in less than 2 months, to be, I think, in a place that is going to be in a huge, huge need for the services, at least for psych services for our population. And although going back to school was definitely in my plans, I had to move it up on my timeline just because of everything that was happening. I just had to be honest and say, well, this is my calling. Like, this is what I'm passionate about. I just got to do it. So I am going back to school to become a psychiatric nurse practitioner, which is something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I am really motivated to help people, but particularly now more than ever. I think that coming together and really just being supportive to everybody that you can is crucial, because everyone really is having an incredibly hard time just dealing with everything. And none of this is anything that we recognize because we've obviously never been through what we're going through currently with this pandemic. So that brings us to why we're here. And I think that we both basically said, what can we do together? What can we do collectively? Just kind of putting our skills together, what our passions are, and then how do we offer support to whoever may need it? Does that sound accurate, or did you want to add to that?
No, I think that's absolutely accurate. And I think with us both sharing our backgrounds, me and human resources, and seeing some of these challenges that people go through typically in the workplace, and now with COVID, it adds an extra layer of complication. And so we just kind of came together. You have a nursing background and that skill and expertise, and we're like, we should do something. We should
Yeah.
advocate. We're both advocates, so that's how we got here, and it's wonderful. And I must point out that we're both wearing green. So
Yes.
we're in green. It's Mental Health Awareness Week, and
Mental health
so
awareness.
yes,
So,
so
yep.
another way that we show our support.
Right. Thank you for mentioning that. I completely forgot about that. But yes, we intentionally wore our green. I wore my one green blouse. I have to get more green. Like, the month of May is pretty long. I really need to get more green in my life.
I discovered I have more green than I thought I did. So it was nice to have options. We all like options, right?
I mean, it was really like, I was today years old when I realized I just don't own enough green. I gotta change that.
Love it.
So, but anyway, what brings us here really is something that is, we would hope to be beneficial and helpful, and really just showing support, I think, at a time where everything is just so disconnected, discombobulated, unfamiliar, scary, I think is an accurate adjective to use, because we really have no idea what's going on from day to day, honestly, not with our own personal lives, but also with our work lives. And of course, the many components to that. But you working in HR, I think, will offer a very valuable point of view that would be necessary. So I think our first topic we wanted to, and of course, jump in at any time because I can kind of go off the deep end. So you gotta bring me back. um, but I think one of the things that we primarily wanted to discuss, and I think there are just some issues that we've seen just kind of cropping up just repeatedly,
Mhm.
and that is a lot of people are working from home, and then the lines between our work life and our home life are very much blurred if they're there at all.
Mhm.
So we kind of thought, well, what challenges do those present? And then how do we best deal with them? So from an HR point of view, what do you think would be appropriate to address, or what should we make sure that we mention?
I think, one of the things that has come up quite frequently in my discussions with employees and with leaders is because of those blurred lines, we see people, kind of burning out a little bit, and they're burning the candle at both ends. They feel like they need to start at 7:30 and end late in the evening. Our household is no different. And so you have to schedule in breaks. You have to remind yourself that work-life balance is still a thing and that it's still important. So as leaders, please check in on your team. Please check in without an agenda and just say, hey, how are you doing? Are you doing okay? Do you need some additional support? Because that's so important. And to that point, just being visible. Sometimes it's easier to hide per se, not in stating that anyone's doing anything malicious, but when you can't physically see people, sometimes it's easier to not necessarily check in on them and for people to be forgotten. And so in a remote environment, it's even more important to show your availability and visibility because let's be honest, in the workplace, sometimes our leaders are not that visible. And I hear that all the time from people. So making sure that you're available and accessible, that you're using different modes, and that you're checking in and letting people be comfortable with that and seeing what else they may need to do their work than their best work, frankly.
Right. And those are all really good points. I think kind of out of sight, out of mind sometimes too. Sometimes when we're in the office there with people and we see them every time we're walking to the restroom or walking to a meeting or something, we can physically see them. But when we're not there, it can be very easy to miss, I think. Um, but yes, remembering, I think you are ultimately dealing with human beings, right? And life is happening. So, like you said, making sure that I think your start and end times really should be something that is kind of scheduled in, and you have to have a buddy. I think having a buddy sometimes that you can call up and say, I have to homeschool my 3 kids. This was a rough week. I have a lot of projects coming up. Can you help me? And just
Mhm.
having that dialogue, I think, ahead of time is helpful, so that you can have somebody that you call when things happen. Because I have to homeschool my kids, and it's hard. It's hard to fit everything in when you have to do that as well, in
Mhm.
addition to all the home things. So I think just making sure that you are doing work things during work time and doing home things when you're off,
Mhm.
and just kind of trying to adhere to that. When you're off, you should really be off.
Mhm.
And I know that I also thought of sometimes we have to make our new office somewhere in the house. Try not to have that be your favorite place, in the house. If it's your bedroom, what happens when work gets a little crazy or stresses you out, and then you're associating those bad vibes or those bad feelings from work with your favorite sanctuary, which is where you
Mhm.
go to have your zen time and kind of regroup, but now it's like work also. So I would kind of just say be mindful of where it is that your workspace is, and communicating with the rest of the family. Just when I have on this special hat or when I have on my headphones, like I'm working, so no interruptions unless it's an emergency or, something like that. I think is also helpful because, right, the rest of the family also has to deal with you being at work, even though you're home. So I think it can get very challenging, that whole dynamic. But again, the communication is really crucial.
Yeah.
Add to that.
I would just say, to that point, you reminded me of something that I left out, and that's just recognizing as a leader and as coworkers that not, it's work is not going to necessarily always be top of mind for people. People are homeschooling their children like you are. I've shared
Right.
before in a different format that my husband and I are splitting space, and that's difficult at times, and we have
Right.
to adjust. And now we actually have a third person in our home. So how do you readjust and readjust? That's how we have to function anyway. We have to always be adaptable. But right now, we have taken adaptability to a whole new level. And so it's being
Yes.
creative, thinking outside the box, and not being stuck in the regimented things that we maybe were doing before. Being okay with being uncertain, as you mentioned earlier, and being okay with doing things differently. I think that serves us well, frankly. Businesses are learning a new way to do business, and to be it's kind of pushing people out of their comfortable zone. And I'll be honest, I love it. I don't like the status quo. I think we should always be
Right.
challenging ourselves. So that's one good thing that's coming out of
Well,
this.
that's another great opportunity to have another webinar
Yes,
because,
ma'am.
right,
Don't get me started.
uh, I know, I second that, I do. But I'm sorry, go ahead and finish your thought.
No, that's good. And I think your advice was great. You have to protect your space too. So your point about, the not having your bedroom be the place where you're working, and then if you're having a stressful day, now you're having a hard time slumbering, and you don't want that either. So great point about
Right,
protecting space.
right. There should really be some places that are totally off limits, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Whatever. You have your favorite chair and, it's in front of your favorite TV, well, maybe you don't wanna be working there because that may have some repercussions down the line that, we don't want.
Yeah.
But, yeah, being adaptable, obviously, none of this is, like I said, familiar territory for any of us, but I think it's even worse than that. I think we also did not have any time to really adjust to the change. It was
Right.
just kind of overnight.
Yeah.
Very few people, I think, got the opportunity to gradually transition over into, you used to work in a cubicle for 5 years, but now we're going to have you work at home, even though we've never ever tried this before and have no idea what it's going to look like. So I think that change was one thing, but then to have it be spontaneous, on the fly, we're just going to
Mm.
wing it, that just added a totally different dimension to it all, which was very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's super stressful, and it's something, I've watched for years, and I've worked for these employers too. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have to do what works for you. But a lot of people were like, we need to physically see you. We need to lay eyes on you. This is how our customers are best served. Well, now the
Uh,
majority of us are serving our customers from home. So I really would encourage people to think about those different ways, and not to don't get stuck and left behind because you just physically need to feel like you need to lay eyes on people. It's not necessarily the best.
our micromanagers, you mean?
Right, because who loves
Yeah.
that? No one loves to be micromanaged. We all
Um,
like our shine. Let us have it.
yeah. And so I kind of secretly was saying, just kind of behind the scenes, these micromanagers are probably ready to stroke out because they cannot physically keep tabs on people the way they used to. But again, it's another topic for another day.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it was a lot of change. It was all at once and it was without warning. So it was incredibly difficult, I think, for a lot of people. And then we factor in the fact that kids aren't going to go back to school for the rest of the year. So now these kids are going to be home also. Like we just know that through the summer now. So
Mhm.
that whole piece is just overwhelming for some people. For people like me that are single parents, like, listen, let's just get real for a minute. It is tough. It is really difficult to do, to juggle all of those things. So having those clear boundaries really truly does help. But it does bring us to our next point, which is why is asking for help such an important skill to learn? I have tons to say about this. I don't know if you want to go
Please
first or you
do.
want me to.
Please do. You are going to be much better equipped for this. So have at it.
Well, I think that, in all honesty, these are extenuating circumstances. I know that there are a lot of people who feel like asking for help is not in their DNA. It just is not how they function. However, because of the situation that we're in, um, this is just a totally different ball of wax. So I just urge everybody, even if it isn't really in your DNA, even if it isn't something that you're used to doing, I'm going to give a couple of reasons why it is imperative. It is just crucial that you do. Why? I had this discussion just yesterday. It takes a village sometimes, for one, but no one will know that you need help if you don't say anything. Remember, we're not seeing each other. We're not having face-to-face contact. People are not clairvoyant. We need to be able to say, hey, I have a pretty busy week coming up. I'm gonna ask my neighbor here, do you mind when you go to the store, could you grab a couple of things for me? Like, there's no harm in saying, I need a little extra help this week. It actually is a sign of strength. I know a lot of people feel as if it's a symbol or a sign of weakness, but I think you have to be pretty aware and you have to be pretty cognizant of your own needs and know what's coming down the pike for you to be able to say, I really just can't do all this and I'm not going to try. I'm just going to delegate some of these things to people that I know will be able to help me. I think delegation is a huge thing, but I'm just asking people, we've had to make a lot of changes. We've had to do a lot of things we're not comfortable with. This is probably going to be one of them, but this is definitely something that will benefit us if we allow ourselves to. Sometimes we have to practice in front of a mirror or maybe send a text instead of call, but the more we do it, the easier it gets. Definitely we have to make our needs known. We have to understand our limitations, know what those are. They're going to be different for me. Like I said, again, I'm a single mom. I am one person. I cannot do everything. So I will call a neighbor and say, hey, don't you usually go to the store on Thursdays? Tomorrow when you go, do you mind getting me X, Y, and Z? Or if my oldest child is going out, hey, well, in your travels, can you look for such and such? That would be a huge help to me. People like to help also is the one piece that I want to add to that. People like to help out. If they say, do you need anything? Tell them yes. And you will see that their faces will light up. Oh, okay, what do you need? They will be so eager to help. So people want to help, let them help. Do what's within your comfort level, but remember, you are one person, you are human. Some of us have more family members in the home, and you don't have to deal with this issue, and that's fine. But even if it comes to work issues, ask for help. I can't do this by myself. I have 8-year-old twins and they're in school. Is there any way that we can collaborate on this together? Because I already see that I'm going to need help this week. What would you like to add to that? Because I think there's obvious more, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think those are great points. And actually, a lot of the points that I would have made, especially, collaboration, helping your neighbor out, your literal neighbor, but also in the workplace, making
Right.
sure we should always be collaborating anyway. That's how we build bench strength. That's how we practice diversity and inclusion. So we definitely want to be helping each other out. That's the beauty of a team, and that's really the definition. So collaborating, making sure. And one of the things too, and hopefully I'm not jumping too far ahead because I know we've had this discussion a little bit, but is kind of observing. It's a little bit more difficult now that we're at home, but making sure that if someone's patterns of behavior are different, that you do check in and that you say, hey, do you just even asking that person for help is good for our mental health. But if you do see someone struggling either performance wise or, there's some conduct or behavior, and this goes for, your employees and leaders, coworker to coworker, manager to a direct report, to really just observe. We should be checking in on each other all the time. And so if we're not doing that, how do we know if someone seems like, maybe they're a little more underwater than typical? And so there are great resources. Many employers have employee assistance programs, or you'll maybe hear them referred to as EAP. I always am a huge advocate of that, and I shamelessly plug EAPs, especially as an HR professional, because they're frankly
Right,
underutilized. So it's a
right.
free resource. The amount of sessions you get depends on the employer, if they offer that benefit, but definitely take advantage of that. Ask your HR department or your leader. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's super important that we ask for help in that way too. I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, I don't need counseling," or "I don't need this or that." Well, surprise, they have financial and legal and other community
Right.
resources. So there, when you and I are so passionate about breaking the stigma of mental health to begin with,
Oh,
but
yeah.
even in the workplace, I've seen it. People say, "I don't want that." They think that they're going to be branded as needing some type of psychological help. And hey, guess what? I went through grief when I lost my dad 5 years ago. I've been through work stress. I have used EAP many times. And so I will shamelessly plug it and let someone else get that help too. Do not be afraid, to Patty's point, to ask for the help that you need. No one is going to
Right.
know you need it if you don't ask. But also, to my point just a little bit ago, make sure that you still check in on people, because some people we know are just not going to be comfortable asking for that help.
And I think that I think we talked about this before, but I think the component that really complicates this is people want to stay in their lane, right? They
Mm,
don't want to meddle. They don't want to be intrusive, right? They want to just MYOB. However, again, I keep going back to the same thing, and this is, of course, our next topic. Um, we do have to check in on each other. It's not something that just someone in a managerial role should be doing. Like if you sat next to somebody in the next cubicle, you would check on them if you were there. So why couldn't you check on them now? And all the more reason to. We're totally disconnected, we're isolated, we are, I mean, quarantine 2020, this is what, week 10 for us. I don't think anybody imagined it would be going on for this long.
no.
So, right. So we are just, it's it's going to be an onslaught of a whole bunch of other issues that are coming down the pike. Again, that's another topic. But check on whoever you would have been sitting with, like at the lunch table, like check in on them. But don't be afraid to ask, are you okay? Do you
Mm,
need anything? I have no problem even going up to my own boss or the CEO or whatever. You don't seem like you're okay. The last Zoom call we had or whatever, everything all right? I have no problem. I know that it's difficult for some people. Not for me, it wouldn't be at all, because I think, again, just the compassion just comes out of me without me even trying. But it's really about caring about another human being, just extending a hand, or just even giving them, just open the door.
yeah,
Sometimes you just have to open the door and they will walk through. Just give them, permission to share. Let them know that it's a judge-free zone, and I think that we would be pleasantly surprised of how people will respond to that. From an HR standpoint, though, I know that you and I went back and forth about, there's kind of some difficult areas to navigate with that as far as the HR world. What did you want to share about that with us? Because I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's we should be asking those questions, and are you okay? And sometimes it can get dicey because sometimes people are really struggling and they disclose something and you're like, whoa, I was not prepared for that.
Yeah,
I am in HR and
right.
that's happened to me like, whoa, all right, let's level set, let's sit down, be prepared to be caught off guard. And that's okay. You have to be comfortable with that. That is your
Mhm.
responsibility as a leader to take care of that person. And too many times, and I've been on the opposite end of this, being in HR and being an employee and not having somebody check in, there were times I was not okay, whether it was work stress or what have you. I am
Right.
vulnerable enough to say that because I believe that sharing our stories helps other people. Where if you're a leader, if you notice that somebody is just they're not themselves, maybe they're super bubbly and energetic and positive and outgoing as I typically am. Sometimes there are times if I'm going through it, like I will kind of shut down, and I need to process. And so behaviors that are opposite, that of what someone has, you just have to check in. And so sometimes people creep to that line and they won't go over because MYOB. But it is our business because it's the workplace. And so many times I have those conversations with people like, well, I don't know if that's really, I don't know if I should really say something, or maybe your coworker discloses something to you and you feel like, well, that's not my place. I have no business saying anything about that, or they asked me not to say anything. I would say you have a responsibility to that person, to their mental health and their safety. Safety in the workplace is so important. You have to say
Right.
something, even if they, because that's how you help them. They may not say it. And I see this in HR all the time. Um, on top of that, we get uncomfortable with, as leaders, well, they told me not to say anything. Guess what? You're a leader. Buckle up. Get ready for the ride. It's going to be rocky. You have to say something. You have a responsibility when you step into leader shoes. That means you have to say something about someone disclosing something about, mental health related, depending on how that is. You don't have to go into all the details, or please don't start asking them questions about, in depths of it. It's what they're comfortable sharing. But at a certain point, and please only share with those who have a need, like HR, like maybe you're one up.
Mhm.
But people get uncomfortable with the uncomfortable topics that they're unfamiliar with. And mental health is one of those things. But we're dealing with humans, as you said. We're all human. We're in the workplace. And so along with us comes, some of the things that we may be dealing with at home, or maybe we're having some work stress. We need to allow an avenue for people to have to turn to. If we don't, we risk losing them, to another employer, or we risk them shutting down, underperforming, being absent, or worse, because we failed to check in on them. And these are real things. I say this because I've experienced it. I had an employee who I just checked in on, and they had told me, like, had you not checked in on me, I plan to commit suicide. And just, can you even imagine the gravity of somebody sharing that with you? I just got complete chills up and down my spine and my arms just retelling that, because it was such a deep moment. But I say
Mhm.
that to say you don't know what people's struggle is. And maybe you feel like, should I tiptoe over the line? Just simply asking if someone's okay. You've now opened the door, as Patty shared. And so, if you're having questions about whether you should do that or not, should you ask this person, something seems different, talk to your leader or talk to, your human resources department, because it's important that you share that. You can't just keep that to yourself.
Right. And that's the thing. If it has to do with their safety or the safety of someone else, let's just say, yes, you most certainly have an obligation to say something, even if they ask you not to, even if they say, well, everybody already knows, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter. It's not a chance that anyone can take. But you're right. Sometimes you will find the one person that you've been sitting next to all that time lives alone. That means they've been, in essence, alone for 10 weeks. It's really, really difficult for some people to be isolated that long. It could be something as simple as they just wanted someone to listen to them. They just wanted to vent. And if you can do that for somebody, why not, right? But if
Absolutely.
you do ask and you do get something thrown in your lap that not everybody can handle, like you said, they're thinking of harming themselves or harming someone else, what do you do with that? I certainly don't suggest that this be the time that you try to become a counselor and
Mhm.
try to help them through it. It's definitely, I think, a time to be honest and say, listen, I'm not really sure what the right thing is, but I'm concerned. And stay on the phone with me, send someone a text while you're talking to anything, but certainly don't keep it for yourself. They may have a plan to hurt themselves, and if you alert anyone, that will definitely throw a monkey wrench in their plan. Well, that's kind of what we would like to do. So definitely tell somebody. And if you're not sure who to tell, your immediate supervisor obviously will be a good first step, or the police if you know where they live. I've had to intercede a couple of times where a patient has said that they were having suicidal thoughts. I didn't hesitate and immediately sent, the police to their home. To be thanked several weeks later during a visit, one of the providers I was working for said, "Hey, there's a patient here that wants to see you, an exam room, whatever." I go in, and of course, they don't look familiar. And they're like, "Patty?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Oh, well, I'm that person you spoke to a few weeks ago, and I told you that I was having thoughts of hurting myself, and you sent the police to my house, and they took me to the hospital, and I just want to say thank you for doing that because I just got out and I feel great, and I'm just really, really glad that you saved my life and that you did that." So even though she begged me not to call, it was like it didn't matter. I had an obligation because I was of sound mind and body. I was able to make a coherent decision, whereas this person clearly was not in that state. So um, I just took that with a grain of salt and said, okay, I know what I need to do here. So is everyone a trained clinician though? Does everyone know how to respond? No, of course not. But we all know that's an emergency and somebody
Mhm.
needs to know. So even though we may not have the right words at the time, it's okay. Just even staying on the phone with them and just keeping them talking really is enough. But
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if we hear that a lot from people now, going forward. It's just really impacted people in the most devastating way. Uh, I just wanted to say a couple of quick things just along this same vein also, and that is sometimes the cues are subtle. Sometimes you kind of think, something's off about this person, but I can't quite put my finger on it. Sometimes they're little subtleties. Sometimes it's them trying to just kind of keep everything under wraps. They don't want anyone to know. They don't want anyone to worry, or they think they can handle it on their own. Whichever the case is, you'll see things like they'll mention to you maybe they're having trouble sleeping or they haven't slept for several days. They seem to be on edge. Somebody that usually is in a good mood most of the time now is just really kind of like having a short fuse, seems just lost, can't get organized for whatever
Mhm.
reason. And this person never used to be this way. So things that we may think are no big deal perhaps are, but if we see that they're kind of grouped together with other small little things, or it's been happening for some time and not improving, if we see people have marks on them, there are people that are having to live with their abusers now under the same roof, no
Mhm.
way out. That's not something they're ever going to tell someone, but you may notice there may be some physical signs that are apparent that you just cannot ignore, nor should you. And those things are pretty important. And if your gut tells you something is off, it probably is. So definitely trust that. If somebody thought that something was wrong with me and they were wrong, I mean, maybe it's an inconvenience, but I guess for me, it'd just be like, thanks for taking the time to even care. Like, I appreciate that you even paid attention to that. And if I did need the help, I would have been happy that you did call someone. So I think worse things could happen, but I don't think that these are those times where we need to just mind our own business. I think it needs to be quite the opposite. We need to kind of be astute, and paying attention to all those little nuances and help people that maybe are not courageous enough or strong enough to ask for the help. And we just need to open the door.
Mhm.
Um, did you want to add something to that?
No, I think that that summed it up nicely.
Yeah, I think these are all very real concerns that people are having, and they're very difficult discussions to have. But I think, like you and I have said before, the more that we have the discussions, the more that we try to normalize this type of dialogue, the easier it will get for people.
Mhm.
It won't happen overnight. And some people will still be difficult to reach. But I think the more that we talk about it, the more that we just say, hey, I needed help this week. It was pretty bad. Here's why. When you're sharing, you don't know who you're inspiring or giving courage to
Mhm.
be able to do whatever it is that they're struggling with, however that may look to them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And part of the reason, I don't know if we explicitly stated this, but you just reminded me too that Hattie and I came together and wanted to talk to you, is because we, both of us, feel so strongly about sharing our stories and the magic that comes out of that to allow someone else the confidence to do it. I don't know how many times I've heard as an HR professional, as a woman, as a human, for people to connect with you. It's it sometimes gives them the inspiration and the motivation and the courage to share their story or to come out of a really bad situation, and but for having that conversation with someone like one of us who is willing to be vulnerable and to share their story and say, you know what, we all have struggles. I will help you and support you on your journey. I will be a resource. I will just be there to listen to you if you need it. It's so important. We Part of the reason there's such a stigma around mental health is because people don't want to be branded. They don't want to be negatively branded. They are afraid to share that with someone because they're going to think that they're less than. And that is not the case. As humans, we are all wired to have emotions, and some of us let those come out a little bit more than others, and it displays differently person to person. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't share our stories, and that if we're struggling, we shouldn't have a shoulder to lean on. So I encourage everyone. HR is not the boogeyman either. I love to help people, and I'm so blessed with having employees who are like, "You are such a different HR person." I hope, and part of the reason that my business was
Clearly,
founded, yeah, is for people to understand that we are humans too. We want to help.
right.
That is our role, and we do have duties and obligations to help you as employees. So I have to share that message because it's so important. Please don't,
Yeah,
shun your HR department. Do you want to talk to your leader because you're
right.
more comfortable with them? Great. But we can be just a great resource, and I encourage people to use all of their resources to connect and to just be whole and safe, and not to be afraid, because the more we tell our stories, the more comfortable everyone becomes. And I will continue to share mine and to do these things until we are all at that place.
Right. I think that the silence is what really perpetuates the shame. Um, the more that we speak it, the more that we just kind of say, look, this is just, I don't know who you've been talking to, but this is real life. This is something we are all dealing with,
Hmm.
nobody here is exempt, and it's most certainly true. But really knowing who you can rely on, who you can go to for certain things is crucial. But also knowing what your limitations are, what you struggle with, where you need help. I mean, if you can guide people to exactly the place that you need them to support you, that's half the battle. So don't be afraid to speak that, because we're all different. And what I may need is very different from what you may need. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
So about acceptance, it's about not judging people, it's about not, as one of my children say, labels are for jars, not people. So
Yeah.
let's stop labeling people, Let's have the discussions. Let's get the uncomfortable topics out there. Like, let's just stop ignoring the elephant in the room. Let's just talk about all of it. And
Absolutely.
let's get people to just um, stop avoiding it, and just really take these issues head on. And I think that that was really what motivated us to get together today, which
Mhm.
I'm very grateful for, if I have not said that yet. I'm very
Likewise. You're
I'm
amazing.
grateful to you stalking me on LinkedIn. I'm kidding.
Just call
I'm
me a
kidding. I'm
stalker.
kidding. No, no, no. I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. I was like, oh wow, someone doesn't think that I was so out there. Okay, well that's cool. I thought it was great that you got out of your comfort zone and you did what you felt was right at that time, and you were just like,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna go with it, and
Yeah.
that's okay. That's okay. So I was very grateful for that, and I'm grateful that it brought us here. But ultimately, I'm grateful that hopefully somebody can take some of the information that we have provided today, and that it will help them. Perhaps it will spark some other thoughts and ideas,
Mhm.
get them to maybe consider things they've not considered before, or to maybe get real about some things that they've not wanted to deal with before. Whatever the case may be, if something good can come out of it, then I think you and I are in agreement that this was a great idea and that we ultimately achieved our objective. Um, but I think that it was great. And I think we should do it again.
And we will. We will, my friend.
Yeah,
So
good. So, how can people contact you if they need you? Should we just kind of put our information maybe in the where we decide to post as well? Or did you want to say
yeah, we can do that.
website?
Yeah, we can absolutely share our contact information if you need to just chat, you
Okay.
need a shoulder to lean on. We're both here and available for you. We love to connect just like we connected with each other. And so we'll absolutely share our information, and we'll likely post this on LinkedIn, and we'll see where else we do, but we'll make sure that you have a way to
Yeah,
reach out to us.
sounds good. Thank you so much for your time today. I thought it was awesome. It
Likewise.
was
Yeah.
fun. Thank
Thanks, Patty. I hope you have an amazing rest of
you.
the week.
Thank you, you too. And to everybody that's listening, just know you're not alone. We are here. There's tons of people that care, tons of people that are there to offer support and whatever you may need. Uh, just need to initiate the discussion. And I think we would all be pleasantly surprised to know how many people really, truly do want to help right now. And it makes them feel good inside to be able to help. So let's let them feel awesome. Let's let them feel great. Let's let them help us. So hopefully this is something that will be beneficial to everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks. We're sending you love and light, and connect with us if you need us. We'll be here.
Yep.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.